me on screen?
I got your class.
Okay, let me switch my cameras here.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you already change back to near camera?
Get that up.
On VIP.
Let's hit stand up. There we go. Now we see you.
Now we just need your computer and we're in business.
Computer. I'm getting no connection from my computer. Just a second.
There you go. It's kind of fuzzy, but it's there.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll fix the fuzzy, I think.
Good job. Yeah.
Okay. So we're good on your end, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I am going to have to restart this. Start this in just a second. How many of you have been playing with your software outside of class time and kind of redoing some of the things that we've been talking about? I really recommend that you spend time playing with this stuff. I kind of relate it to Greek vocabulary. If you don't work on your Greek vocabulary, you lose it. You're going to learn in Greek. You're going to study these words. He's going to ask them to you on a test. And if you don't keep working with those same words, he can give you the same test 2 weeks later, and you're going to have no idea what the words are because you're just not going to keep them fresh. So be working with the software. Experiment with different things, set things up, work on creating a Bible reading plan, or work on a prayer list, or run a vocabulary list on a book that you haven't run it on before. Sort it by frequency, descending, and play with those various features. You're going to get the most out of this if you get in the habit of using it every day. Okay? We were talking last week. We ended up stopping on Vocab Lists is where we were, I believe. If you go up under File, New, you have a whole bunch of choices for various things you can run. We looked at a verse list and we looked at vocabulary lists. So you know how to do those. I wanted to show you the way that I'm showing you to do things. We're going to actually step through the menus of the program, and by doing that, I'm kind of showing you the long way around to get there. For example, taking your mouse and going up to File, New, and then opening this dialog box and then choosing something in this dialog box and clicking OK works fine if I'm creating a vocabulary list. But you also have a row of menu items that are in icon view. This toolbar, and we're going to actually at the end of the class talk about how to customize these. You can make your own completely with the reports and the commands that you use most often, and you can make a totally customized toolbar. But I want you to notice about the middle of your toolbar, there's a little icon that looks like a piece of paper with a starburst in the upper right-hand corner of it. That is the same command as going up to File, New. And if you click on it, you're going to get the exact same dialog box, the new document dialog box that you were getting going up to the File menu. But the cool part of that is always pay attention to these little black arrows that are next to icons. When you see that, they tend to tell you that there's a shortcut there. If you click on the little arrow, it brings up a pull-down list, so you can just go straight to vocabulary list, and it launches a new vocabulary list from there. So rather than going up to File, New, waiting for the new document dialog box to open, scrolling down, selecting vocabulary list, you can basically get to it in 2 clicks from the icon menu. So that can be really helpful. The other thing that's really helpful is the one right next to it. I'm going to close this for a second because I didn't want to run another vocabulary list. The one right next to it is File, Open. But again, if you notice, there's a little black triangle there. If you click on the black triangle, you have access to all of the documents that you've already created. For example, if I want to open my James vocabulary list, I can just scroll down to vocabulary list. Another window pops open, and I can scroll down to my Greek James vocabulary list and click on it. And there's my vocabulary list ready for me to look at and modify and do whatever I want. So very, very cool that we can get to those things through the icon menu rather than the file menu. And in some ways, it's more efficient and it's a little easier. Yeah, I realize you don't have a lot of documents that you've created yet, but we'll create more and more. The other thing that I wanted to mention that I kind of skipped over in the file menu that I want to go back to for a second is I want you to open a sentence diagram. Go to File, New, or you can use your icon, or you can use the little arrow next to the icon, and go down to open a new sentence diagram. Now, I'm not here to teach you how to do line diagrams. Those tend to be more complicated. But there's an interesting feature in here that I forget about, truthfully, and it can be very helpful. In exegesis class, there have been a couple of times when Denny has given you a pericope and said, okay, what do you see in this pericope? Well, sometimes I'm going to teach you the way I learn. I'm a visual guy, so sometimes I got to isolate the pericope and play with it. Draw it on a piece of paper, draw arrows, underline things, do something so that I can start messing with it. Well, you can do a form of sentence diagramming that doesn't use all these lines and charts and everything like a traditional sentence diagram is that might help you do that. For example, click on Insert Passage. You'll notice that you have a number of options. The first one, you have 2 radio buttons at the top of this dialog box. One is as individual words for line diagrams, or the other as wrapping columns. What I want you to do is select as wrapping columns.
I can't get that sentence diagram to pop up. It just says none.
It says none? You need to do File, New, not File, Open. Make sure you're creating a new dialog box rather than an open one.
Okay.
Yeah, remember that you've got 2 choices here. One is new, one is open. If you're trying to open one, none exists, so you won't have any in your list. I want you to go ahead and then you have number of columns 1. Let's just leave it at 1 for right now. It makes this easier. Your version, select the New American Standard, New King James, whatever you want. If you want to stay with me in this, select the New American Standard 95 Update as your version. And then in your passage, let's type Colossians 1, 10 to 14. Colossians 1, 10 to 14. Now you have a couple of other options here. Include transliteration as alternative text. That only works with an interlinear translation. It will not help you with an NAS 95 translation. There is no alternative text for it to insert, so it's not going to do anything. Color words by parts of speech will help you if you have a morphologically tagged text. The NAS is not, so you won't see colors when we do this, but for right now, leave include transliteration off and leave color words by parts of speech on. It's fine. And say insert passage. Now, if you remember, the other day, this is the passage that we looked at the sermon that was done on this particular passage, and we talked about what some of the stuff that you'll find in here. But one of the cool things that this will do, now that it's in this diagram format, is that as you click on things, for example, so that you will walk in a manner worthy of the Lord. Well, that's a phrase to me that needs to stay intact, but how do we do that walk? Well, the first clause outside of that looks different to me is this, to please him in all respect. If you click on the word to and hold your mouse button down and drag it, it allows you to indent it. And you can see it's kind of clicking to some various indents, but you can drop that down a line. So that you will walk, well, how are we supposed to walk? Well, actually, in a manner worthy, right? I mean, that's one way that we're supposed to do that. So I'm going to actually move this down an extra line. So we are to walk, number one, in a worthy manner. Number two, to please him in all respects. Bearing fruit is how we please him in all respects. Bearing fruit in every good work. And increasing in the knowledge of God. Being strengthened with all power. Do you see how you can start and being strengthened with all power? How? According to his might. I'm going to make that another indention. Why are we to be strengthened? For the attaining of all steadfastness and patience. And then joyously giving thanks is another thing we're supposed to do. Gloriously giving thanks to who? To the Father. I'll indent that. Do you see how you can start to break down this passage and move things around? It's completely free form. This is just for you. There's no right or wrong way to break it down. But it's a way for you to drag and drop and kind of organize this information the way that you want it, the way you see the text. So that you can look for structure, you can look for patterns, and that kind of thing. When you're finished, it doesn't matter what condition this is in for right now. Go ahead and try to close this dialog box, and it's going to ask you to name it. Name it Colossians 1, 10 to 14. And say OK. And it goes ahead, it saves it, and it closes it. Now open your workspace. Open a workspace that has your Bible in it. I don't really care what other windows it opens. Right now I just need for you to be able to get to an NAS 95 Bible. You can just open it by yourself through your My Library if you want to. But get a Bible to Colossians chapter 1, verse 10. And then go up under Tools, Bible Study, and do a passage guide. So, in essence, what we want to do is run a passage guide on Colossians 1, 1 to 12, or verse 10, either way, and click Go. I'm just trying to show you that you now have sentence diagrams in your passage guide. You should have one. The one that you just saved should appear in your sentence diagrams, does it? And when you click on it, it automatically opens that sentence diagram. And you can keep changing this if, as you see something new in the text, you want to rearrange this a little bit. Certainly can. It's completely freeform. But if you spend some time breaking down a pericope, it's nice to be able to have those notes, if you will, right here. And it shows up when you run a passage guide to remind you that, hey, you've done some detailed work here. You've broken this down a little bit. Do you want to see your outline or your sentence diagram? And so that will help you to do that. The other thing that you can do inside the sentence diagram is you can use visual markup filters, and not filters, markup styles, and we're going to talk about those today, so I don't want to get there yet. We'll come back to that. But kind of a neat little way for you to break down a pericope and start to organize it. You can put multiple lines in between things. You can drag things out of order. You can do all kinds of stuff to break this down and play with it and get it in your head as to how the structure's working. Yeah, Terry.
When I clicked on that too, and I dragged it, I was expecting the whole thing to move like yours did, but it's just a one word move.
That's because when you did insert passage, You had it selected in the first radio box as individual words for 4-line diagrams. You need as wrapping columns. That's what makes this different. When you use as individual words, each individual word is separate, and you can use all of these diagrammatical tools on the left-hand side to create traditional sentence diagrams. I'll be honest with you, I didn't like doing sentence diagrams in 4th grade. I still don't like them at my age. So I'm not into that, but there are times when you want to diagram a sentence to see what the structure is, but that's why yours is doing that, Terry.
If we want to make a change to that, the sentence diagram, how do we save it? Does it just save it when we exit out of it?
Yeah, when it exits out, it's going to, Logos automatically saves changes to open documents. So when you change something and then close it, it's been saved. It's not like traditional programs where you have to save it. Now, that can be good and bad. One is that it has saved it, but if you change a bunch of stuff and then you're like, you know, I've messed this up, I just want to open the original one, well, guess what? It's not as easy. When you go to close this, it's already been saved. So you got to be careful with that kind of stuff. But do you see how you can get to it in your sentence diagrams, in your passage guide? So again, a good way to break down a pericope, start looking at the details and the structure within a sentence, within a group, so that you can play with it and determine whether there is structure there that you see or don't see. Questions about that? Okay. We've pretty much exhausted the file menu there as far as new and as far as open. Remember, opening is opening a report or a file that you've already created, whereas new creates a new one from scratch. We talked about verse lists, right? So you're clear on that. That'll come in more when we start doing searching, and we'll show you how to actually automatically add verses to that verse list rather than doing it manually. The other thing in this first menu that's important, this is where, under File, this is where you get to your load and save workspaces. We've already talked about those things, so you should be familiar with how to load and save a workspace at this point. This import note file and connect to remote notes, we're going to skip for right now. We'll deal with that when we talk about note-taking in Libronics later on in the quarter. Import sermons is part of that sermons file add-in that I told you about. I kind of showed you that it keeps track of my sermons for me. This is where you import those sermons, and so you probably don't have that option. And then you have page setup, print, preview, print, export, all of those things that are pretty normal for Windows-based programs. And then at the bottom, you'll also notice that you have recent documents and recent workspaces as a quick way to get to certain document files, certain workspaces that you've worked on recently. So those are pretty self-explanatory. I don't think we really need to spend a whole lot of time going through those options. So the next file menu is Edit, and you'll notice this is a pretty traditional Windows file menu as well, or Edit menu. You've got undo and redo, you've got cut, copy, and paste, you've got delete, select all, those kinds of things. Again, if you're familiar with any kind of computer programs in Windows, these are standard commands. I will tell you that cut, copy, and paste are 3 keyboard shortcuts that you should know. And this isn't just for Libronics. This is for everything that you do in Windows. I am surprised that some of my colleagues who have been using computers now for a number of years, and they select text, then they go all the way up to the menu, and they pull down, copy, and then they go to their Word document, and they click to insert their cursor, and then they go up to the menu and pull down for paste. It takes a long time. Control-C for copy, Control-X for paste, and Control-V for, Control-V for paste. Start over. Control-C for copy. Just think of C, copy, Control X for cut. And I always just think of cutting an X into something. So think of Control X for cut. And Control V for paste. Those three keys are right next to each other on your keyboard, and they're really easy to get to. And you just need to get into the habit of copying and pasting with your keyboard rather than with your menu items. It'll save you a lot of time. That's not just Logos, that's any Windows program. And those exist in just about every program on the planet. So if you know those keyboard shortcuts, they will help you everywhere. The other one is undo and redo. Control Z for undo. Typically undoes the last thing that you did. Now I need to tell you that in Libronics, there's a lot of times when Control Z doesn't do anything. One of the places where it doesn't do anything that frustrates me is in that diagram window. I'll grab something and drag it down, and it's like, oh, never mind, Control Z. Well, guess what? Control Z doesn't undo what I just did. So there are some places where undo doesn't work, but it's a good keyboard shortcut to know. I wish we had a little watch that had undo on it that we could just, when we make a mistake or do something we know we shouldn't do, we could just Control Z and undo it and start over. Life doesn't work that way, but computer programs do. All right, search is the next dialog box, and we are going to skip this entire menu because we're going to come back to this and spend days in this menu. But I want you to look at a couple of things while we're here. There are a number of different kinds of searches that you can do. You'll notice the first one is search, then you have basic search, Bible speed search, Greek morphological Bible search, Syriac morphological Bible search, Hebrew, Aramaic, syntax searching, fuzzy searching, and advanced searching. The search capabilities of this program are awesome, and we need to spend some serious time in these menus talking about what you can do and how you can search for things. And so I want to deal with it all in one big chunk. We're going to spend a few different class periods talking about searches and how to do that. The View menu is where I want to go next. View menu is just like any other program. It's what's visible on your screen. The very first option is Information Window. And I need to thank Mike Green for this. I've been using Logos for a long time now, and the information window to me was always kind of clunky. Now, I've discovered that they changed it when they shifted to 3.0, and I knew that. I just hadn't gotten in the habit of using it, and I'll show you why. It functions now just like any other resource window. It used to always be a floating window, and when I say floating window, it means that it sits above all the other windows. So if you've got it really big and you hover over something and it gives you information, it covers up windows and it just kind of hangs out there in the middle of nowhere, which in my mind always was a little weird. Now, if you go under Tools, Options, General, you can turn it into a floating window if you want. Mine is set right now to float because I wanted to show you the dialog. But you'll notice under Interface, if you click on Interface in the left-hand column, about 2/3 down the side of that menu, you'll see some checkboxes. One says Use Floating Information Window. Yours is probably turned off. Leave it off. I'm just showing you where you can change that setting. With it not floating, it now works just like any information window. So if I make it the same size as one of my windows, you'll notice it's now tabbed just like any other window in my interface. It didn't used to do that. So that's neat, that it will now just be part of your workspace if you want it to be. The advantage of the information window is getting to information quickly. I'm going to move it over here so that I can see my New American Standard Bible. I'm going to go to Acts 2:38. And now just hover over some words in Acts 2:38. Hover over the word repent. It's the Strong's Greek number 3340, and you'll notice that it's metanoia, metanoeo, And you can see here some information about that particular word from Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. It occurs 34 times. The American version, the Authorized Version, King James Version, translates it as repent 34 times. Means to change one's mind, to change one's mind for better, heartily to amend with abhorrence of one's past sins, blah, blah, blah. So you can see that you can get to all that information. It even has cross-references right in that window. That's cool. I mean, all I've done is point my cursor at a word. Now, what appears in the information window? All of the data types that show up underneath whatever you're hovering over. So for the New American Standard, that's why I'm getting Greek Strong's numbers, is because the Strong's numbers are embedded in my New American Standard, right? If I change my Bible to the New King James Version and try to hover over repent, what do I get? I just get a cross-reference. I don't get any information about the word repent. Why not? There's no other data type there except English, just the word repent. And so I'm just not going to get anything else. Does that make sense? Now change it to the King James Version and roll over the word repent. What do I get?
How did you get that second window?
The information window?
Yeah.
It's under your View menu. It's the very first option under View menu. It's called Information Window.
Okay.
And then you can just make it part of your workspace. You can change its size or do whatever. So in the King James Version, hover over the word repent. Now what do you get? Well, I'm back to getting Strong's numbers. I actually get what's called TVM numbers, tense, voice, and mood numbers, because they're embedded in the King James Version as well. So I'm getting information in this information window from whatever data types I'm hovering over. Okay? If you hover over a Greek word, I happen to have my UBS text open here, and I'm hovering over, let's see, the word baptizo. Now this is interesting. Look at all the information that I'm getting in the information window on that word baptizo. At the very top, all right, time out. Everybody open your workspace that has your Bible, your ESV Interlinear, and your UBS text. We created that workspace, right? So make sure that that's the workspace you have open for right now. I should have made you do that before so you could follow along easier. Many of you probably did it anyway. But make sure that you open that workspace. And then go up under View and select Information Window. And I want you to drag your information window so that it is the same size as one of your columns. When you do that, you'll notice that it tabs the interface down here at the bottom. And then I want you to drag that information window so that it's over the middle column. That gives you access to your Bible, and it gives you access to your Greek text so that you can see what's happening in this information window. Does that make sense? Now, go ahead in Acts 2:38, since that's where we are, find this word baptizo. On mine, it's the third line down. It's about the 7th or 8th word in the verse. But look at the information that the information window is giving you. It gives you the manuscript form of the word in the top. It gives you the lemma or lexical form of the word. And then it has some numbers there. 77/64. Those are numbers of occurrences. Then it gives you the morphology of the word right underneath that. You'll notice it says verb, aorist, passive, imperative, right? Then it gives you transliterated forms of the word, and so on. And it eventually even gives you the Greek Strong's numbers information. So all of that just from hovering over it. Now, since this is a window in the interface, try to put your cursor inside that window. And you'll notice that when you put your cursor inside the window, it doesn't go away. The information stays there. Yeah, Brett.
I do not have 7764.
What do you have?
Nothing.
Yeah, I don't have anything either.
Does it have the lexical form of the word or just the manuscript form?
It has, looks like everything else, just not the 7764.
Okay. I noticed on mine, some of mine did not, and some of mine did too, and I couldn't figure out why some do and some don't.
Maybe because of the book you have.
It may be that because of Art and Gingrich, it may be from some other things, but it might be because of my library. I am going to show you a setting that we need to turn on, and that may be the issue. So we'll get to that in just a second.
I've got it, Mike, and I've got the
Actually, I think it's a setting in that place that I told you to go the other day, but we'll look at that. Now, here's what's important, and this is why the information window is so much more powerful than it used to be. It used to be that once you moved your cursor off of the word that you were on, your information window would go away, or it would go blank until you hovered over something else. And you had to hold down the control key to interact with the data that was in the window. And as long as you held down the control key, you could stay on that information. As soon as you let go or you moved your cursor outside of the window, the information would go away. Now this information stays here long enough for you to interact with it. Now, it can be temperamental, though. If you hover over another word, sometimes within the information window, mine kind of jumps. So if it's changing on you, the control key still works. But what I wanted you to do was hover over these words in the morphology. You've got verb, aorist, passive, imperative, third person singular, right? Well, what is an aorist verb? Well, just hover over it, and there is a definition of what the aorist tense means. The aorist verb tense is used by the writer to present the action of a verb as a snapshot event, blah, blah, blah. So when you see this morphology and you don't know what aorist is, or you need to remember what the force of a perfect tense is or a passive tense, you can just hover over those words and it's going to tell you what the grammatical definition for those tenses are. Make sense? So that works out really, really well. Okay? And you can interact with the information in this window better. Now, how do you control what's in this window? That's an important aspect of using this window. Let's say I don't want Swanson's for my Greek Strong's numbers. I want to use something else. Well, if you go up under Tools, Options, Bible Tools. Tools, Options, Bible Tools. And in the left-hand side menu, you select Preferred Books. This is basically the place where you can tell Logos what your favorite books are for various things. You'll notice the very first one under General is Preferred Bible. Well, you set that where? But where did you set it the first time?
On the home page.
Yeah, you set it in the preferences when you customized your home page. Well, you notice we don't go to the home page as often as we used to. If I want to change this setting, I don't have to go to the home page and change it. I can just come to this Bible Tools options and change my preferred Bible to whatever I want. Okay? You can set a preferred Hebrew Bible, your preferred Septuagint translation, your preferred Greek text, and so on. Now, some of them you will notice on yours will not have any choices available. For example, on mine, the preferred Coptic New Testament says no applicable resources available, and I don't have any choices. I don't have a Coptic version of the text in my library, so it's not giving me a choice. You probably have the same thing under preferred apostolic fathers. Yours probably says no applicable resources available. Is that true?
Now, why is that since we have some?
You don't have the apostolic fathers with morphology in Greek. All you've got is Josephus, and you have some of the early church. You have the early church fathers, but this is a specific apostolic fathers resource that you can certainly buy. Preferred Dead Sea Scroll transcription. I don't have any Dead Sea Scroll transcripts, so I've got no applicable resources there as well. But what we want to make important is you'll notice that now the second section in this area is information window. And this is where you have two radio boxes at the top, check boxes. The first one is show lemma definitions in information window. The second one is show lemma frequency. Brett, is yours show lemma frequency on or off? It is on. Okay, well that ruins that idea. I assumed that you weren't seeing the frequency numbers because that was off. But that may not be the case. So it probably is a resource that you maybe don't have. But then you'll notice that you've got data types, and then you have three options. Show a definition from the following resource. The default, which means basically you're going to let Logos tell you what resource it's going to use to give you definitions, which is fine. I mean, they have perfectly acceptable resources to do that. The first key link resource, which means if you change to the first key link resource, it's going to be the first book that you promoted under, like for right now, my data type is selected under Greek. So if I put first key link resource, it's going to go to Art and Gingrich for me because that's my first key link resource for the data type Greek. Does that make sense? Or you can specify a specific resource that doesn't have to have anything to do with your key link setup at all. I tend to leave mine on default, but you can certainly customize this any way you want. Now the trick to it is recognizing how many different data types you may want the information window to tell you. For example, when you scroll over something that has a Strong's number, you need to adjust the Greek Strong's number data type to reflect the book that you want it to give you the definition from. You also need to change probably the Hebrew Greek Strong's number data type key link information, the English key link information, the Greek key link information. So there's a lot of data types that you might be dealing with in this information window that if you want to customize them, you need to remember to customize all of them. Now, it may be that you're perfectly content to let it pick the Hebrew Strong's number source for you, but you want a specific Greek Strong's number source. Well, just change that one data type. But the value of the information window is that it can deal with so many different data types, and it can give you information very quickly about a lot of different things. So it has become much more powerful in recent versions. And I was explaining this to somebody yesterday, and this is important. Sometimes when you learn how to do something a certain way, that's the way you just always do it from then on, right? I mean, you learn how to go up to do cut, copy, and paste, and if you learn to do it through the menus with your mouse, guess what? From then on, that's how you do it. There could be 50 other ways to accomplish it, but it's what you're used to. We are certainly creatures of habit. Once we learn something, we're good, okay? With this software, I want to challenge you to learn to do things new ways. One of the very powerful things with this software is that there are 50 different ways to accomplish something. And just because you never use the information window, which is where I was, I never used this thing. Well, that's silly. I mean, I should put it in my workspaces, at least ones that are more general study workspaces, so that I can get to information faster. But because I used an old version, and I used it for a while and just didn't catch on to the mindset, for me, it wasn't the way I like to work, I turned it off. I don't ever use it. And I think it was Mike who says, I use it all the time. It's like, okay, well, why? Well, I had to go back and look at it again and say, oh, well, this is different, and oh, this is different, and oh, I can change this and I can do that. And so you learn how to use these resources more effectively over time. But all of that takes playing with it. I mean, it takes getting in and digging and figuring out how you can make it most beneficial to you. So don't forget the information window. It can be very powerful, and it can be a good tool for you. Questions about the information window? Okay. We're going to leave it open for now. We'll come back to it later. So that's the first thing under the View menu.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
I also wasn't getting the numbers on the side, and I just unclicked the box and re-clicked it, and they're there now.
Okay. That may be the case with that show lemma frequency. It kind of did the same thing to me when I first went in to play with those settings. It was on, but I wasn't getting them, and I clicked on it to turn it off and went back to the information window, and nothing changed. I went back and turned it on, and then I was getting them. So, okay. Well, what's happening is sometimes when you launch the program, some of the settings in the program are from when you first launch it. And so you change some of these dialog boxes, especially when we get into those tools, options, areas where you're changing kind of the preferences for the program. If they don't seem to take effect right away, close the program, restart the program, and let it reboot with those new preferences, and sometimes that'll solve your problems as well.
What are those numbers again?
That's frequency, number of times it occurs. We'll talk more about that.
Which is awesome to be able to hover over a Greek word.
You can hover over a Greek word and get a sense immediately of how many times it occurs in the New Testament. So that's, the first number is total number of occurrences. The second number is number of times that word is translated by that way. Okay. I want to show you something that's really, really important about the View menu. Make sure that you're in your Bible window, that it's active by clicking in it or clicking on the title bar. Select your New American Standard 95 Bible and go up to the View menu. And click once on the View menu. You'll notice that you have information window, visual filters, visual markup styles, contents pane, locator pane, sync table of contents, zoom, inline Strong's numbers, interlinear Strong's numbers, and Bible text only, right? I mean, everybody should have those same choices, okay? Don't select anything in there, but just click outside of that menu. Now go over and select your Greek text. Just make that window active and go up and click once on the View menu. Anything change?
I don't have the interlinear and the Bible text only.
You don't have it? Then you don't have an interlinear text open is probably why. But before, when I clicked on the New American Standard, I had different things down there at the bottom, didn't I? I had inline Strong's numbers, interlinear Strong's numbers, and Bible text only. Now I have interlinear and Bible text only. What's going on there? Why did it change?
Those numbers are already there.
This menu is what you call contextual menus. Whatever context you're in, you have different view options. For example, and this is kind of funny, click on your information window. Just make your information window active and go up under View and click on it. What do you have? All you have is information window, visual filters, visual markup styles, and zoom, right? You lost all those other choices. Why? Because all those other things aren't available in the information window. So the View menu changes and gives you more options depending on what kind of resource you're hovering over. All right? So the View menu becomes important because it gives you choices that you may have in some resources, but you may not have in other resources. So get used to looking at the view menu, because it will give you choices in its particular context. Click on your Bible window. I want to deal with just some basic Bible stuff first. We've already taught, and skip visual filters and visual markup styles for just a moment. We are going to deal with those, and these are fun. This is important stuff today with these visual markup filters and these markup styles. But content pane, we already talked about that, right? Where else can you get to this command? On the actual resource window. Now, mine's a little too small. I'm going to go ahead and drag it out here so that you can see it. But toggle contents pane is right here, and toggle locator pane is right here in the resource window. So what View is doing is it's using those same commands basically in a menu format. I find it easier to execute these commands from the resource window rather than from the View menu. But again, you can get to it however you want. The other one that I think is really important for some folks, I know it is for me, is the zoom. And zoom allows you to change the size of the font. Basically, it zooms in and out of your particular resource. For those of you that have high-resolution screens, you're setting your screen resolution to 1500 by 900. The type ends up being this minuscule little stuff. You can fit tons of stuff on your screen, but it is really hard to read any of it if you've got eyes as old as mine. I start going, well, the zoom just allows you to change the size. And we talked about this the other day briefly, but I usually stay somewhere between 125 and 100. So you can adjust the size of your font, the size of the type, just by using zoom. I tend to park somewhere in that 110 range. Seems to be comfortable for my screen resolution. I tend to make mine a little bit bigger for class so that you can see my resources a little bit better. Which makes it a little easier. Makes it fuzzy, but it makes it easier. Now the other problem that is, as you scroll, as you zoom to larger sizes, the one thing that I'll warn you is it makes your text look bold. If you can notice my window, my Bible window, it looks like all the text became a bold typeface. Well, when we get to some of these visual markups and you make the text bold, it can be harder to see when you're at larger sizes because everything looks bold. Does that make sense? So there are hazards to making things too big. The other thing that you'll notice, and we're not going to deal with the bottom half of this menu because it's contextual. We've already talked about inline Strong's numbers and interlinear Strong's numbers and Bible text only in relationship to a Bible window. But I want to go back. I'm going to change mine and go with me to Colossians 1, verse 9. How many of you write in your Bibles? I'm going to teach you how to write in your Bible. Now, before we start to electronically write in our Bibles, I want to ask you some questions about how you write in your Bibles. When you write in your Bible, you typically, for example, in verse 10, there's this phrase, walk in a manner worthy. I might underline it in my Bible, right? So I'll underline walk in a manner worthy in my print Bible with an ink pen, right? What happens with ink? Can I erase it if I change my mind? No. Now the cool part is, in electronic versions, you can erase it. Okay? Let's say I did it in pencil in my print Bible. I underlined walk in a manner worthy, and then I underlined bearing fruit in every good work, and I underlined increasing in the knowledge of God, and I underlined being strengthened with all power, all with pencil. Now I want to erase them. How do I erase them? Can I erase them all at once? You have to erase each one individually, don't you? Well, one of the hassles of writing in your electronic Bible is that you can't just turn it off and turn it on. And that's unfortunate in my mind. There are times when I want to be able to look at what I've written in my Bible, there's times when, since it's electronic, there should just be a switch somewhere that I say, just hide all of my pencil marks for right now. I want to look just at the text and not be distracted by all the stuff. I don't know of any way to do that. Once you write in your Bible, you can erase it, but you can't hide it. Okay? Now, if you have a King James version of your print Bible and your New American Standard Version, and you do all your studying in your New King James Version, and you write in your New King James Version, what happens when you pick up your New American Standard? Well, why not? You got to write in that Bible too, right? Well, guess what? Electronically, works the same way. When you write in an electronic Bible, you're writing in that Bible. You're not writing in all of your Bibles. So, it's another thing where I would like it to have an option to say, I'm writing in this Bible, but show me my notes, show me my markups in other translations as well. Doesn't work that way. So if you just think about traditional ways of doing things, some of it is exactly the same. All right? What we're talking about here is what you find under this command for view visual markup styles. And I want you to go ahead and select that for a second, and it brings up this cool dialog box. Now, this is really neat. This is new. This is new as of 3.0. So this is probably only 6-8 months old that you've been able to do this. Notice at the top you have a pull-down menu, and if you select it, the first one is emphasis markup. Select that, and you'll notice that you can change things to all caps. You can do a blue underline. You can make the text bold. You can draw a box around it. You can put brackets around it. You can do a color box, double underline, an exclamation point, all that kind of stuff. Cool stuff. Go up and select that menu again, and you've got a bunch of different highlighter pens. Blue, brown, gray, green, orange, pink, purple, red, yellow. Right? Select the next one, and you have parts of speech coloring, adverbs and conjunctions and nouns and participles and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to show you how to do this one automatically without doing it manually, and there's going to be a big difference. So I skip parts of speech coloring for right now. Then you have this precept inductive Bible study. There is actually a whole system out there that you can find in bookstores that sell Christian stuff. I don't like saying Christian bookstores because bookstores aren't Christians. But that sell Bibles and that kind of stuff. And it's a Bible study method where you would mark all of the occurrences of blood, for example, with these little red droplets so that you can follow these themes throughout Scripture. And they've got some pretty outlandish markup styles, okay? Anything that has Israel has the little Star of David behind it. And anytime Jesus is mentioned, it has a cross next to it. And law looks like a little open book, and listen looks like an ear, and love is a little heart, and that kind of stuff. So you can start marking up your Bible in a systematic way. This is another thing that I don't do, but there's nothing wrong with it. If you like this kind of markup, go for it. And then the last one is the Synoptic Gospel coloring. Does everybody have the Synoptic Gospel coloring? What is Synoptic Gospels? Who can tell me what the Synoptics are? Why?
They are supposed to be connected in a way. Verse 3, they're almost similar.
They tend to tell the same stories over and over. You know, different accounts of the same story. Now, there's something that you guys will get into that is called the Synoptic Problem, if you haven't already. And that's, I mean, referring to the Gospels as synoptic really isn't a problem. The people that have developed the Synoptic Problem have turned it into a problem. But they are synoptic. That means they tend to give 3 different accounts of the same thing in a lot of areas. So this is a way that you could actually mark up your Bible to remind you that this particular account shows up in Mark and Luke, or Matthew and Luke, or Matthew and Mark, so on. Again, this isn't something that I do in my electronic Bible, but you may want to. Now, go back to highlighter pens. Select highlighter pens as the choice. And select red. Let's click on red. You'll notice that you can tell it's selected because it has a box drawn around it. And now go over to your Bible. And I'm in Colossians 1:9. Let's say we want to mark the word reason. For this reason also. So click and drag to select the word reason. And since I have red selected, it should be marked, right? So click anywhere else, and was reason highlighted? No. See, I would like this to work like a highlighter pen, where you pick up the pen and then anything you mark, it marks. You got to do it the opposite, okay? So select reason, and now go over and click on the color red. You'll notice that the word reason deselects and is now highlighted red. Okay? Now, do you remember that command item to undo? Control Z, right? Undoes. Do Control Z. Guess what? Doesn't undo. Now, if I write in my paper Bible, can I just say undo? No. I have to erase it. Okay? So you have to get in the habit of thinking like an eraser. So notice in your Visual Markup Styles dialog box that's still open, at the bottom it says Erase Selected Markup.
Where's that?
Right at the bottom of this window, it says Erase Selected Markup. Go ahead and click on it. It should tell you to remove visual markup, you must first select something. So, you have to go back to the word reason. You have to click and drag to select the word. And then you hit Erase Selected Markup. And reason is no longer highlighted. Now, I'm going to give you a keyboard shortcut for both of these things. I want you to select reason again, click and drag to select the word reason, and do Control K. Just think of Visual Markup Style K. Makes no sense to me that it's Control K, but it's Control K. So it's just one of those that you have to remember. But you'll notice that it applied the red highlighter. Now select it again, select reason again, and hit Control-Shift-K, and it deletes it. That will come in very handy. Those keyboard shortcuts will come in very handy, because you don't want to have to keep going back to this styles, this visual markup styles area all the time and selecting Erase Selected Markup and so on. Does it make sense? Now, the cool part is that you can mark up or select as much as you want. Select the phrase, since the day we heard of it. Now you'll notice that I'm having you click and drag, I'm not having you double click. If you double click on an individual word, it actually executes a key link search. So if I double click on reason to try to select it, like you can sometimes do in Microsoft Word, if you want to select a word, you double click on the word and it selects that word. Well, if you double click on this to select the word, it not only selects the word, it executes a key link search, and you don't want to do that. So when you're doing this markup stuff, think of it kind of like a highlighter pen. You select it, and I'm going to make this orange. Woohoo! I now have orange in my text. And it's going to be there until I erase it. So I can select it, and Control-Shift-K to erase it. Now, the power of this comes in with the idea that you've got all of these different types of markups. Especially this emphasis markup palette has all kinds of choices, which are really cool. But the fun part is that you can make your own. Now, select Emphasis Markup and click Edit. you get this new dialog box. Now, with emphasis markup selected in the palettes in the top, you'll notice you have all of the palettes available at the top, and then you have styles that are available at the bottom. With emphasis markup, I want to add just a new kind of style. You'll notice in that bottom window that these add styles are not available. You can't add or remove or edit any of the styles in emphasis markup. Basically, this was a good thing. They gave you some sets of marking utensils and said, you can't change these. You can copy them and then modify them, but you can't change the originals. So it keeps you from messing up the set that you got when you picked up the stuff. So for example, I have one called Michael's Bible Markers. And the way I did that was I copied emphasis markup. So select emphasis markup and hit this copy button. And you'll notice that it says copy of emphasis markup. And you can click the word rename in the right-hand side. And you can call this set whatever you want. I called mine Michael's Bible Markers. So call yours whatever name you want to call it that you will remember. I'm going to go ahead and remove that copy because I've already done this.
You do that again?
Yep. Select emphasis markup, and then in the right-hand column, select copy, and it places a copy of emphasis markup in your palettes window. And it says copy of emphasis markup. Well, that's kind of a weird name, so click rename, and you can call it Terry's Highlighters or whatever you want. Now mine's Michael's Bible Markers, and it's, for the most part, simply just the emphasis markup. But you can create a new style. Now you'll notice that down here you have add, remove, edit, copy. Okay? So for right now, let's add a new one. You have this giant add palette style dialog box that comes open with a billion different options. You can do all kinds of stuff. Let's name this one fun. Let's name it fun marker. Now just add a palette style. So fun marker. You'll notice that it puts whatever you call it in that preview box at the bottom of the window. Does that make sense? Now, as you select various styles, it's going to show you what the marker is going to look like in that bottom window. The first options that you have are shading. You have shading styles. Click on that pull down. You can do solid shading. You can do natural shading. And natural just kind of looks like it fades out at the end. It's not so set. It doesn't look so computer generated. What they're trying to do is give you the chance to have it look like a real pen mark rather than a computerized highlighter that is perfectly crisp and clean. I tend to like the natural looking stuff better than the other stuff, but some people won't like it. You can change the color of the highlight. You can change its opacity. Change it down to 10% and you can barely see it. But if you change it up to 100%, sometimes it becomes too dark. The default is 75%, which seems to be pretty good for most things. But you can change the opacity. You can actually change the font. If you select Other, you'll get to your font menu, and you can actually change the font that the word is arranged in. I'm not going to do that here because I have too many fonts on this computer. But you can change the font. You can make the type bold or bold and italic. You can superscript it or subscript it. You can small caps. You can all cap. Whatever you'd like.
How did you get that window right there?
I just added a new palette style. When I was in here, I selected Add to Michael's Bible Markers. Do you see where I am? No, that's adding a whole new group. You just want to add down here styles for Terry's highlighters. Now you're going to make custom styles for your particular study. So you click that and it'll take just a second and pop open, and now you're where I am. Okay? You can make it bold, you can make it italicized. You can turn these options off and on. So I'm going to make mine bold for right now. I'm going to make it a natural outline or highlighter, and I'm going to make it kind of this orangey color, and I'm going to say OK. Now you'll notice alphabetically Fun Marker is now in my list for Michael's Bible Markers. Go ahead and close the Edit Visual Markup Styles just to get back to your Markup Styles list. And at Visual Markup Styles, make sure that your set of markers, mine's called Michael's Bible Markers, is selected. And Fun Marker is in my list now. And when I select something in my text and hit Control-K with Fun Marker selected, it uses that color highlighter and it makes it bold. And I can Control-Shift-K to erase it. If I want to edit it, I go back up under Edit in the top of that menu. Make sure that I'm on Michael's Bible Markers, select Fun Marker, and I've got an Edit menu now, and I can go back and change this style. And I just want you to kind of, for a second, look. Under Effects, you have Glow. Go ahead and turn the shading off. Sometimes the shading, just select None for shading so you can look at some of these other options. Effects, you've got a Glow, which is kind of neat. It really makes the text pop off of the page sometimes when you use Glow. You've got Outline, which just turns it to outline, which I find extremely hard to read. You've got Shadow. It'll just create a little drop shadow. You've got Emboss. You've got all of these interesting Engrave. You've got all of these some of these, I'll be honest with you, it's like, what on earth were they thinking? Why would you emboss a word and make it so hard to read in the middle of your text? But you can. And it's just about being able to do whatever you want. Now, this is the Burger King section of the Logos Bible Software. Have it your way. Now, one of the cool ones is these line styles. Select the very first one, which is solid, because I want to show you what your choices are here. Oop, what happened? Select solid. And notice that it automatically, in the boxes underneath it, has selected left, right, top, bottom. It draws a box all the way around. You can turn off these various aspects of the box. You can have it just be the bottom and top. You can have it just be the bottom. You can have it just be the top. You can underline. You can strike through the text. You can set margin start and margin end. Margin start and margin end is going to put a line over in the margin of your Bible across from that verse. And margin end is going to put one in the left, on the right margin across from that verse. So it's kind of a way of bracketing the whole page, that verse on the page. I'll show you in a second what that looks like, but again, I don't typically find a need to do that. Strike through, strike is interesting. You'll notice it puts a line right through the middle of the word. There are times, for example, in the New American Standard, what does an italicized word mean in the New American Standard? It's not in the Greek text. It's a word that's there to aid in translating, help you to understand, But if it's italicized in your New American Standard, it means that it's not in the original Greek text. Well, in some places, Romans, for example, they talk about the law a lot. And there are sections within the book of Romans where the New American Standard has added the word the. And they've capitalized the L for law. Well, Paul wasn't talking about the law. He was talking about law in general, law as a concept. He wasn't talking specifically about the law of Moses. And by adding that the in there, it gives the impression that Paul was saying the law. Well, the law of what? The law of Moses is how we refer to that. So there may be times where you want to remind yourself that that word doesn't belong there, and you may want to strike through it. So create a markup style that draws a line through a word. I do that in my print Bible all the time. I'll draw a line through those italicized words when they don't help me understand correctly. And so you could create a mark through or a strikeout marker style here and mark those words correctly. Questions about this so far? Now, one of the neat ones, and this is where you can kind of go crazy, is this section, as if you couldn't go crazy with all these other options anyway. I want it bold, italicized, oblique with boxes around it and all kinds of stuff. Oh, look at all the rest of the choices that you have for lines. I just showed you solid. You have natural, which looks kind of scribbly. You have dash, dot, wavy, jagged, rippled, double solid, double natural, double dash, double dip, double don't, it goes crazy. But they will help you create different styles for different things. Yes?
The way you got that box later, you could use your down arrow, just kind of run through them all, kind of see.
See, you learn something new every day. And you can just see visually what they all look like. Cool. Ooh, ah, ooh, ah. And you can control the color of the lines. You can control the width of the line. Make it a 6-point line. And then now it looks like the 1960s. And then click on that box and use the down arrow to look at all the different stuff. Ooh, cool. Now you would never do that in your Bible. It would ruin any readability whatsoever. But you can. And that's the important part, is that you can. Okay. All right. The one that I want to look at is image. Notice that it has none selected, but click on the word set. Now they have done a nice thing for you, and they have given you all these little graphics. Again, the attempt to make them look hand-drawn. On the third row down, you have like an asterisk. Click on the asterisk, and you'll notice that it puts it in the middle of your word. Position, you can change its position. So you can make it go before the word. You can make it go after the word. You can make it centered in the middle of the word. You can move it all over the place. I'm going to select mine before my word. Offset, I can make it superscript. I can make it tiny and elevated, or I can make it subscript, which means that it's going to be small and below the line. I can change, I'm going to go back to normal. I can change its color to, let's say I want a red one. So now it's red. And then I can change its opacity. Now, a word of caution in everything I've read says, if you make your own graphics, and you can, and I'm going to show you that I actually did that already. If you make your own graphics and you import them, you do not want to change their color inside Logos. This color option will still be available, but make your graphics whatever color you want them before you bring them in. And Logos will run much smoother and much faster. But this is neat that you can do your own. Now, you can even do text before and text after. The last choice, for example, I want to put a question mark before the 2 question marks before the text. It'll do anything you want. You can put notes, you can put numbers, you can do anything before or after the text that you want. Okay? in essence, what you can do is you can create as many custom markup styles as you want that make sense for you. Now, if you're going to make graphics, you want to make graphics that are 96 pixels by 96 pixels and save them as a JPEG file. Okay? So for those of you that are into making graphics, 96 pixels by 96 pixels, save it in a JPEG format. And when you click Set here, I'll show you one, for example. I mean, and they've got all kinds. They've got little snow boots and candles and cameras. They got some weird. Honestly, they have some very weird ones in here. It looks like a power drill, which I don't get. But if you click Other, it lets you navigate to wherever you have graphics that you've made. Now, I like lists. I tend to notice lists in the text. And so I use these graphics that you see on my screen to create these markup styles. I'm going to close this for a second and just show you some of my markup styles. If I go to the top of my list, I've got list number 1. And you'll notice that it underlines it, and it puts a little blue dot with a 1 inside it. And then I have a 2, and I have a 3, and I have a 4, and I have a 5. Now, what that allows me to do is what you see right here in Colossians 1, 9, and 10. Now, it's a little hard to see. Let me open my zoom here. I'm going to close these for a second. I'm going to go ahead and zoom so you can see it better. Oop. Make this one bigger. Okay, so my markup style makes the text bold, underlines it, and then puts a little circular number in front of it. So when we go back to me breaking down this particular passage, here's my command, and I actually have a markup style called command that does a yellow glow and then adds this interesting little exclamation point before it. So that's cluing me into, okay, there's a command. And then my list of participles that I have marked in my English text, I know that there's 4 of them. And so there's all 4, and they're numbered, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so just at a glance, I have that sermon that we talked about the other day highlighted right here, ready to go. I mean, it's marked in my Bible in some respects.
Mike?
Yes?
How did you go again to Logos List? To show that one?
How did I go to Logos List?
Yeah, to get that number 1.
I made it.
Oh, you made it.
And I'm going to show you how I made it right now. So let's go to your visual markup palette. Now you don't have these graphics, so you might want to just walk along. Right now I've got through 5. I made list 5, but I made graphics to do up to 8. So I'm just going to show you how I put this together. Now the other thing that you'll notice is that this list of markup styles is alphabetical. So if you want your commands or your markup styles to float to the top of the menu, start them with a number or put a space in front of the name. If I start it out with space command, it's going to move to the top of the list. And that's true with the way programs sort anything. Okay, but I wanted these to float to the top of the list, and that's why I didn't name them list 1, list 2. That would have been all the way down in L's. I wanted these at the top because I use them all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this, and I'm going to create my number 6. So I'm going to add a new style. I'm going to call it 6-list, so I'm being consistent. I want to make the font bold. I want to underline it. Now, I tend to do something, when I want to underline something, instead of using underline, I use the bottom of the box. And the reason is because it floats a little further down underneath the letters and helps keep the text easier to read, in my opinion. When you do underline, look at the difference. See where it says 6 list? See where that line is? If I turn off my bottom line and do underline instead, underline is much closer up to the bottom of the letters. So letters like Y's and G's that go down below the baseline of the letter get kind of struck through with an underline. When you do the bottom of the box, it's not so bad. So it's just what I prefer. So I did my line, bottom of the box. I changed my color for my outline, and then under my graph image, I said set. I have a different graphic. The graphic that I have is list 6, and so I'm going to say open. Notice it put it in the middle. I don't want it in the middle. I want it before, and now I can say OK. And now when I close this, I have number 6. And if there were another 6 in this, I could select this. And I could do Control K to make that number 6, and then I have a 6 in my list. So you can make as many graphics as you want. It does not appear to slow down the processing on the computer much at all. It's just part of the deal. Now the one weird thing that happens, and you can see it here, I'm going to close this window for a second so you can see. Because I selected bearing fruit in every good work, look at where my footnotes are for that word bearing. Because I put a little graphic in front of this, it actually shoves my footnote way over here. This footnote, cross-reference, is related to the word bearing. And it kind of moves it in a weird way. But as long as you're familiar with that, it's not a big deal. Now the other thing that it does is, since I told it to put these numbers at the beginning of what I'm highlighting, watch what happens when the thing that I highlighted spans 2 lines. Like here, bearing fruit in every good work, this is a 1, and then it put another 1 down here because it had to do a line break. So it's trying to tell me that good work is still part of number 1, which is kind of neat. I mean, I like that because I don't have to think, okay, did I underline good work separately, or is it part of a bigger picture? So see, now it really shows you when it's that narrow. I've got all these blue dots, but they're still numbered correctly. Make sense? Questions about creating your own visual markup? Yeah, Mike?
If you export this to PowerPoint, does all that show up still? Or do you have any problems with tagging and copying and putting that on?
The problem with markup styles is that they are unique to logos. They do not print, and they do not copy and paste into other resources. So if I copy and paste this text into Microsoft Word, I'm not going to get any of these visual markups. Right. Yes.
What about Paint?
No, it's not part of the text once you copy it out of here. It just doesn't know where to go. Now you could do a screen capture of this window and get it, but that would be the only way I know of to get it out of here. Now there is one other way, and that's why I wanted to go back earlier. You can apply visual markup styles to sentence diagrams and then print them out. So if I go under my sentence diagrams real quick, if I go back to open sentence diagrams and open that one we worked on earlier, let's say I select walk, and walk is a command, so I want to mark that with my visual markup style. I can open my visual markup styles, and I can select it and make it a command. Now, notice what it did, though. It kind of butchers the word a bit. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on. You may have to drag things around, but that will actually print out now if I print this. I can do the same thing with bearing. What you can't do, I can make that list 1 and so on. What you can't do is you can't select multiple words. See, you can't select multiple words and apply it to a phrase like you can in the text. So it's a little clunky, but you can do it in your sentence diagrams. It's just bizarre. But yeah, visual markup styles, it's kind of just, the best way I can relate it is think about your print Bible. If you write these things in your print Bible, there's no way to get them into PowerPoint either. Now, I'm with you, Brett. Since it's all electronic, you should be able to move this everywhere, but you can't. So, and now if I want to go back and erase these, I have to erase them one at a time to get rid of them. I will show you some tricks where you can erase multiples at the same time, but we'll do that after the break. Let's go ahead and take a break. One second. Okay, so interesting stuff with this visual markup. Now, one of the things that I don't like, just to say it straight out. For example, I had to select each individual phrase here, and since I used a different markup because I was numbering, I had to select each one, apply the markup, and then select the next one and apply the markup. If I want to erase it, I have to do the same thing. I have to select each one, erase the markup. Now, there is a way to do all of them at once, and that is if I click and drag and select this whole section and do Control-Shift-K, it just got rid of all of them at once. Now, that's fine as long as that's absolutely what I wanted done. Because Control-Z or undo doesn't put them back. And if now I want to put them back, I have to put them back one at a time. Because, there's no way to do multiples. Now, I'm going to show you a faster way to apply them, though. You'll notice I don't have my Visual Styles palette open, but on your icon toolbar, you have something with a letter A that looks like a highlighter pen. And there's a little arrow next to it. So if I click on that little arrow, I have access to the visual palettes that I want. And I want Michael's Bible markers, and that's the one that I have selected. And this is the list of my choices. So I can go back and put command back. I can do bearing fruit in every good work, and then select the little arrow and say that was list 1. Increasing in the knowledge of God, go back up under that little arrow, select list 2. Strengthen with all power. So it's a much faster way to get to these visual markup styles once you've created them. Now, if you want to create a new one, you have to go through the editing process. You okay? But at least now I can select them. Now, this is another thing that's interesting, and I want to show you this. Notice that joyously giving thanks to the Father in the end of verse 11 and verse 12 spans a verse marker. This is connected. This is a bad verse break in my mind. It should have broken before the word joyous because it's joyously giving thanks, right? It's not with all steadfastness and patience and joyously giving thanks to the Father. So I want to select joyously giving thanks to the Father, but you'll notice that when I select it, I get my verse marker as well. And when I apply my list, you'll notice that it includes that verse marker now in my markup, which, I don't know, doesn't bother me, but look at what it's doing. When it breaks the line, it's not repeating the icon and stuff at the beginning. It's kind of forcing it into some strange line breaks because that verse marker is part of the selection. So that's kind of a pain. I would rather it not do that, but it does. So you just need to be aware of that. Okay? So that's a much faster way of applying these highlights. Now, you can still get to all of those different palettes. If I just want to go to my highlighter pens, I can just select my highlighter pens and go from there. So it makes it pretty quick. Questions about visual markup styles? Yeah, Mike?
It's maybe a dumb question, but if I can see it as handy, is there any way that I can make
2 copies.
my New American Standard? That way I can have one who uses markup and one. Is there any way to do that?
You and I think a lot alike. I spent probably 35 minutes last night copying the resource files buried in my computer and making duplicates. I have not figured that out yet, but there's got to be a way to do that. And that's what I wanted. Basically what Mike is saying is if we duplicated the resource file, could we have two New American Standards, one that has markup and one that doesn't? Logically, I think there is, but I have not been able to get it to work yet. So I kind of beat you to the punch on that one, and I haven't figured it out yet. But I think there probably is somehow. So if I figure that out, I will let you know.
Why don't you give him a call and ask him?
Because playing with it, I learn a lot more sometimes than just calling and asking them. Once I get to a point where I just absolutely can't figure it out, I'll call them. But at this point, I'm learning from playing anyway. So it's kind of my way of. See, I'm honestly, guys, at home in the evening, I'm on my sofa with my laptop, doing, creating these little graphics or figuring out how to do complex searches and that kind of stuff. It's fun. I'm one of those sick individuals that likes to play with this stuff and likes to study. So, yeah. So, all right.
Wendy's the same way.
Yeah. Okay, so there's visual markup styles, and that's really neat. I want you to make sure that you have, everybody still has their workspace open that has their ESV and their Greek text open as well. Is that correct? Okay. What I want to talk about now is the visual filters. Before we start with the visual filters, I need to tell you some things. One is that they're based on morphology. So, what is morphology? Todd, what is morphology?
Sorry, I can't remember.
Give it a shot. You're too old. If you're too old, I am in serious trouble. What do you think morphology is?
Study of changing shape.
No. That's from our video game expert in the back. He's watched too many Star Trek episodes where they're shapeshifters. That's what it is. It's the study of shapeshifters. Levi.
A study and description of word formation.
A study and description of word formation. What did you hover over to give you that information? The word morphology. Very good. Somebody is starting to use their head. You get extra brownie points for that. Morphology is basically the form of a word, okay? So if it's a first person singular verb, present tense, that's its morphology, okay? Now, we talked the other day, and Denny hasn't gotten to it yet in exegesis, but we will very soon, talking about searching for things like imperatives. What is an imperative, JR? That's it. It's a command. We learned that last quarter in L&R, right? Different kinds of sentences. An imperative is a command. In Greek, individual verb forms can be imperatives. They are commands, okay? Participles are morphological forms that support imperatives. In other words, they are, the technical term is they're verbal nouns, but they can support imperatives by saying, this is how you accomplish the imperative. And we talked about that in relation to Colossians 1, walk in a manner worthy, and then what were the participles? Bearing fruit, increasing in knowledge. Those ing words are participles. Now, wouldn't it be cool if while you're reading your New Testament, it would tell you what the imperatives are? I want it to show me where the commands are. I mean, we looked at this, and we'll look at this one in particular, but we'll look at the Great Commission as an example. Select your Greek text. now let's jump straight to the ESV. Select your ESV Reverse Interlinear. You used to have to do this from a Greek text. Now with the ESV Reverse Interlinear, you actually can do it from an English-based text because it's got the Greek and the morphology built right into it. Select the ESV and make the window big enough that you can see it. I've made mine larger just so that you can see it on screen, and I'm going to increase my zoom so that you can see it even better. I want to go, pardon? I want to go to Matthew 28:18. The Great Commission. And I actually want to focus on verse 19. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you, and behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. What are the commands in verse 19, Eli?
Go therefore.
Okay.
Make disciples.
Okay.
I guess it's like baptizing them.
Okay. That's what we typically think. How many of you have heard a lesson taught that says, go, we're commanded to go? That's the command, go. Well, guess what? Go up under View and select Visual Filters. We're going to talk first of all about the morphology one, but there are a lot of other visual filters that we'll talk about. This will take the rest of the day if we even get it finished with it today. But I want you to select, you'll notice at the top you have 4, All Resources or Window. Make sure Window is selected. Make sure the ESV, Greek Reverse Interlinear New Testament, is selected in that box.
In the window box?
Yes, up where it says Window. And then select Morphology Filter. See, they're morphological searches, but it's a morphology filter. So I got stuck halfway between morphological and morphology. It is. It's a difficult place to be in life. Click Morphology Filter and say Add. What that does is that actually moves it over into the right side window. You'll notice that this is active. These are the ones that are active. And it puts a little check mark next to the Morphology Filter. Now, in order to set the filter, you have to edit the details of the filter. So with Morphology Filter selected in that right-hand side window, click on Details. Now, don't let this window intimidate you. As time goes on, this will make more and more sense as you learn more and more Greek. But what you're basically doing is you're going to be searching for various Greek forms within the text. Now, I want it to show me first all the verbs, okay? Because verbs are important. They're the action words. So if I just click up here where it says part of speech verb, and then say add, down here in the bottom left, you'll notice that it adds 3 different forms. Verb finite, verb participle, verb infinitive, okay? All of those are valid verb forms. So once there's, do you see where I am at the bottom where it says reference list? That's what we're looking at. Select the first one that says verb finite. And now in your palettes, right next to that, you have your visual markup styles. So any of the custom styles that you've created are available here, or the highlights. I just want my highlighters. Go to highlighter pens, and I want you to select red for finite verb. And then I want you to click on verb participle, select red, and verb infinitive, select red. So you just click each one of those, tell it that you want the red highlighter pens, and then say OK. And go ahead and close that box so that you can see your text. What are my verbs in Matthew 28, 19 and 20? Go. No, wait a minute. Is disciples a verb? But is disciples a verb? So why did it make disciples red?
Make disciples.
Because it's make disciples. You remember in your ESV, I don't have mine turned on, but when you show the, let me change my interlinear stuff. Let me turn on my Greek alignment so you can see it. You notice I'm pointing at my screen like that, pointing it out to you. You notice right here this little arrow next to make? That's telling you that this Greek word contains the word make and the word disciples. So if you see something happening like that, this verb is make disciples. The verb isn't just make, it's literally make disciples. Okay? So we got go, we got make disciples. What else do we have in 19 and 20? Baptizing, teaching, observe, command, I am. So there are all the verbs, right? Okay, so we can see the action words, but I want to actually see the imperatives. All right? So go back under View, go to Visual Filters. Now I'm going to do this all in one filter, and then we're going to create separate ones, and I'll show you why. Select your Morphological Filter again, and click Details. We're just going to edit the same filter that we had going before, okay? We're not creating a whole new filter. We're just changing this one. We already have all of our verbs marked red. Now I want to mark the imperative verbs green, okay? So select Verb. And then notice down in this section that says Tense, Voice, and Mood. You'll notice under Mood, you have Imperative. Select Imperative. So you should have checked Verb in Part of Speech and Imperative under Mood. And say Add. Just Verb and Imperative. And you'll notice now at the bottom, you have a Verb Finite Imperative, right? Click once on it. And in your highlighter pens, select the green highlighter. Okay, so what have I told it to do? I've told it to mark all of the verbs red, but I've told it to mark the imperative verbs green. Click OK. And then close the window. What is the command in the Great Commission? Go is not an imperative. It's while you're going, make disciples. So please don't preach a lesson that God commanded us to go. We need to go out into the fields and we need to go here and go there. That's certainly acceptable. That's what this says. But the command in this section is to make disciples. You're commanded to make disciples everywhere you go. Does that make sense? Now, do you see how you can start to see things like that in the text by having it highlight for you? Now, I need you to know that when we turned on these filters, this is not just in Matthew 28:18-20. It's in your entire New Testament. Turn to the book of James. Just at the top of your ESV, type James 1:1. You should notice something very interesting in the book of James once you hit about verse 4 and you keep scrolling through. You're going to see lots of green verbs. Out of 108 verses in the book of James, there are 56 imperatives. They are commands. It's really neat to start to see that in a visual form. Now, this is bothering me, though. I turned on all the verbs red. Do I really need to see, like I was just scrolling. I'm in James 1:27. Do I really need it to mark is every time? I mean, it's a verb, but I'm not really interested in every verb. I just want the commands, right? So go back under View, select your visual filters, select your Morphology Filter again, and click Details. We're just going to edit these verb forms. Now, I do care about participles, but I don't really care about every other kind of verb. So select verb finite and just say remove. And select verb infinitive and say remove. Now I'm going to have my participles marked as red. I'm going to have my imperatives marked as green, right? Just say OK. All I've done is modified this filter. And now when I say close, now I'm only going to see those imperatives, those mundane verbs like is and am and was and were. They're not going to be marked. I'm just going to find my imperatives and my participles. Okay? But it's throughout the entire book. I mean, your entire Bible is now marked with imperatives and participles. Go to Colossians.
Which one did you select on the reference list? Was that verb finite and what was the other one?
Just keep participles and imperatives. Delete the other two.
Okay.
Yep. Let's say OK.
Mike,
Yes.
I only have one.
You only have one?
I only have one too.
You only have one? What do you mean you only have one?
Well, one.
I don't have the imperative.
Then you didn't select imperative under tense, voice, and mood?
No, that's the imperative one there, but for the one where you're supposed to show three, just selecting verb. You don't want to select one.
Okay. No, it's because you're using a different Greek text, right? Okay. Let me explain that for just a second. As you're in the Esv Reverse Interlinear, you're following along with me and you're getting what I got. If you accidentally started this filter for the UBS text, it's got a different morphology. Which this may be a good time for this discussion. It may not be. I have a printout that I'll give you. It's a handout. Notice that when you select, for example, if I go to my visual filter and I select my morphology, I keep wanting to say morphological filter. When I select my morphology filter and say edit details, since I started in the ESV, you'll notice under data type at the top, it says Greek morphology Swanson. Now, Doug, if you look at yours, it's going to say data type Greek morphology something else.
I don't know, I fixed it, so.
Okay. I think it might have been Logos, it might have been Freiburg. There are 3 or 4 different morphological approaches to the text. And your resources will deal with different morphologies. But the ESV only uses Swanson's morphology. The UBS uses a different one. The NA27 uses another one. And there are slight differences. And when you start to count imperatives, if you count from the ESV using Swanson's morphology, you're going to get a different number of imperatives than if you count using the Logos morphology from the UBS text. Now, why is that? Well, there's different schools of thought as to what constitutes morphological forms. And I don't want to get crazy and confuse everybody. But, for example, Swanson includes imperative forms as participles, whereas the Logos morphology does not. So if you say, show me all the imperatives, it's going to include verbs and participles. Whereas one of the other morphologies, there are imperative verbs, and then there are participles. So it just depends on how they approach tagging the text. But that's why you were having a different set of choices than I was. If you're using the ESV Reverse Interlinear and your data type is Greek Morphology Swanson, you should have gotten what I got. Now, let's go ahead and close that for a second. Now, let me show you why this becomes helpful. Turn to Colossians 1 and look at verse 9 again. You start to see these strings of participles. And that should clue you in that something's going on. And you'll notice that the other day when I talked about this, when I talked about these strings of participles in this particular passage, you'll notice that in verse 10, you got walk in a manner worthy, but then you've got bearing fruit, see, an ing word, increasing in knowledge, but then you've got be strengthened with all power. And then you also have giving thanks to the Lord down at the bottom. And actually being qualified is another one. We would typically, if we were just looking at the English, looking for participles, we would have missed be strengthened. Because in the New American Standard, it just says strengthened with all power. We wouldn't pick that up because it doesn't end in ing as a participle. Whereas when you turn on morphological filters like this, it'll help you pick up the nuances of what are going on in the translation that you might otherwise overlook. For example, in the New American Standard, you might be tempted to pick up attaining of all steadfastness and patience as a participle. It's not. And this confirms it by looking at the Greek. Attaining isn't listed as a participle. Does that make sense? Now, what I like to do is I actually like to separate my morphological filters by the kind of thing that it is so that I can turn each one off and on. Right now, this one morphology filter is going to show you both imperatives and participles, right? Well, what if I just want to see imperatives? Sorry, the filter shows you both. What if I want to just see participles? I have to keep going in and modifying stuff, which gets to be a pain. So, go to View, Visual Filters. Make sure that you've got your ESV selected so that when you go into the morphology filters. These filters are also resource dependent, which means that this markup only shows up in the ESV Reverse Interlinear. The way we know that is because in our visual filters, we chose that window to apply the filter to. So, select your morphology filter, select details, and I want to just delete the participle for right now. Just say remove. Select participle and say remove. So the only thing left is verb, finite, imperative, and I want it green. Now, at the top of that box, you have a name for this filter. Name it imperatives. I'm going to have to name mine imperatives too because I already have one of these filters, but I want to show it to you anyway. So just name the filter imperatives and say OK. And before you leave this box, let's create a separate filter for participles. So select under Available Filters, select Morphology Filter and add it to the active window. Click Details. Did I lose you, Perry?
Yeah, well, the verb should be finite or infinite?
Finite. It should say finite because that's where imperative is under the mood finite. Select the morphology filter, edit the details of this filter. Under the name, type participle at the top. Now the fastest way to do that in the ESV is to just select verb and click add, and it's going to add verb finite, verb participle, verb infinitive, and then just delete the finite and the infinitive. Do you see how I did that? So just click on the part of speech verb and click the add button in the lower left-hand corner. It's going to put 3 things in your reference list. Delete the other 2 so that what you're left with is verb participle. Then change your markup palette to highlighter pen and select a color for your participles. Now you marked your imperatives green, so select anything other than green. I'm going to change mine this time to purple because I can, and say OK. Now, you should have, when you're done, your screen should look like mine. In your visual filter area, you should have imperatives and participles with a checkbox next to both of them. If you turn one off, you're turning off your participles. If you turn the participle one off, the filter is still there, it's just not active. So if you turn off participles and close the window, now when you scroll through your text, you're only going to find imperatives. Best place to go to find imperatives is going to be the book of James. The fastest place. And as you scroll through, you're going to find imperative verbs. So now I'm just looking at commands. That's what I wanted, wasn't it? I just want to see what we're commanded to do. Okay, so there's that. If I want to turn participles on, I just go back under View, Visual Filters, and check the checkbox next to participles on and close that box. I don't have to recreate the filter. I just have to turn it on. So having separate filters for the different things that you want to filter out really makes sense because you don't have to edit your filters. You don't have to recreate them. You just have to turn them off and on.
When you said we should have in your visual filters window, where we would add, all I have there right now is imperative. You said we should have both of them.
Okay, and it's participles. It's not imperatives. So you edited the filter instead of created a new one. Go ahead and click on it. Details.
What?
Click participle. Remove.
I was in the right version. I just clicked on the
Okay, so your imperatives are going to be green,
But
and it's called
I have
imperatives. Click OK.
I'm only getting
Now, click on Morphology Filter. Add. Edit the details. Click up here and type participle.
Participle.
You're going to have to click up there to do it. So type participle. Just spell it anyway.
They undid it by
Whatever.
itself.
Select verb. Click add. Now delete finite and infinitive. Click it, remove. Click infinitive and remove. Change to your highlighter pens. Make it a different color other than green. Purple. Say OK. Now you've got them both there and they're both turned on. If you turn one off, it's going to... Do you see the flexibility that you have by creating these multiple filters? Now, you could just as easily create one filter and modify it every time, but to me that's clunky. I want to be able to change these in and out real fast. Now, in your Esv Reverse Interlinear, this is kind of cool. Select your Esv Reverse Interlinear, go up under View, select Interlinear, and turn off everything except your Esv text. And say OK. you now have an English text. Now listen to this carefully. This is important to get your mind around. You have an English text that is marked up based on the Greek morphology of the words. You're looking at English words highlighted because of their Greek equivalent. Not because of their English form, but because of their Greek form. You cannot do this anywhere else except for the ESV Reverse Interlinear. That's why I really like this resource. It's that bridge that we talked about between the English and the Greek in a way that no other resource has it. Now, there is a new revised standard Reverse Interlinear, but it doesn't have as many tools as the ESV. And truthfully, I think the ESV is a better translation. But this is powerful, that you can now read your English Bible in the ESV, but mark it up based on its Greek equivalents. That's cool. That's very neat. And that will save you lots of time. Now, there are other types of filters for morphological searches that you might want to do. For example, go back under View, Visual Filters. Add a new morphological filter. So we're not editing one we've already created, we're putting a new one in. Add details. And select noun in the top. And then under case, number, gender, and person, select nominative. Then down in the lower left-hand corner, click Add. And I want to make my nominative nouns, highlighter pen, I'm going to make them, let's see, we've used purple and red. I'm going to make them orange. And say OK. And actually, I'm going to edit my details again. I'm going to actually name this filter nom nouns. Just N-O-M. You can type out nominative if you want, but I'm going to type nom nouns. And say OK. Nom nouns. Yeah, little nom nouns. OK. And go ahead and close it. What are nominative nouns? Subjects. So, now in my English ESV, because I didn't turn all my interlinear stuff back on, I now have orange highlights for the subjects of a passage. I have imperative commands highlighted, and I have participles which help me achieve the imperatives highlighted. So now I not only know what's being commanded, who's being commanded to do it, or what's being commanded to do it, what the nouns are, the subject nouns. So, cool, huh? Now, are all nominative nouns the subjects?
Yes.
You had a 50-50 shot, it was worth it. Not always. There are times when you'll have nominatives that aren't subjects, but most of the time they are. So, interesting stuff? Okay. So, morphologically, you can create as many filters as you want, and you can sort them all over the place. All right? Keep in mind that you have different morphologies in different Greek texts. That may change it slightly. So you'll have different options when you go into that filter. But get accustomed to that morphological filter view, because we're actually going to use an interface very similar to that to do morphological searches. And the difference being, this actually is just marking them in the text. I actually want to run a report in James to show me all of those imperative verbs, for example. Rather than just highlighting them all in the text, I want a list of them all. And we're going to actually do that once we get to searches. Okay? Questions and comments about morphological searching? Not searching, markup, visual filters. Yes.
Is there any possible way, say, I'm studying the book of 1 John, and maybe I'm doing also in another class a study of, I don't know, Revelation. Is there a way that I could, if we're going through and doing the participles, just do it for that book, but just have something completely separate for the book of Revelation, and just have it for those books and not have the rest of it get away?
No. When you're talking about marking up the text, at this point in time, through these morphological filters, you can't specify a range. So you can't say just mark in the book of James or just mark in Revelation. Now, if I were studying 1 John and Revelation and I wanted to see the participles in 1 John, but I wanted to see the imperatives in Revelation, you would do a morphological search and you could create verse lists that would give you that information. But you wouldn't be able to adjust the markups. So that is a downside to the markup issue, is that when you mark up, you're marking up your entire New Testament. Now, you just go in and turn them off if you don't want them to be there. So it's not like markup styles where once you mark them, you have to erase them to get rid of them. These you can turn them off and on at will. If you want to turn off participles, turn it off. If you want to turn it on, you can turn it on. Yes?
Can you have it mark prepositional phrases?
You could have it find prepositions, sure.
But not the entire phrase?
Well, the problem is you're looking at different morphological forms. So you would have to have it mark the preposition and the article and the object of the preposition. And that's difficult to do morphologically in one search. Now, that is exactly what syntactical searches are for, which we may not get to. But they start to deal with words as to how they function rather than what morphology they are. I want to find every prepositional phrase where the object of the preposition is name. So basically what I'm asking for, show me every prepositional phrase that is in the name of something. Well, it could do that syntactically. To do that morphologically, you won't get there. And we'll deal with some of those issues when we get to searches. Okay, there are some other cool visual filters that we need to talk about because they do things other than just morphology. I want you to open. You should have the Bible Knowledge Commentary. So open your My Library. And search all unlocked resources by title and type in Bible Know or Knowledge. You should find the Bible Knowledge Commentary and go ahead and open that resource. Now go ahead and tile your windows vertically so that you can see your Bible, you can see this commentary. At this point, you don't need your Greek text. So if you want to close it to get it out of the way and then tile vertically just so that you have, I want to go ESV commentary. I just closed my Greek text. I still have my ESV Reverse Interlinear open and I have my New American Standard open. Go ahead and chain link these together for now, but I'm going to show you some things. And we need a commentary open for some of these other active filters that we can do. With the Bible commentary open, go up under View. Make sure that the Bible Knowledge Commentary is your active window. Go up under View, Visual Filters, and you'll notice now you have some choices that you didn't have when you were looking at morphology. You should have active Bible reference, you should have Bible reading plans, and you should have page numbers, and you should have summarization. Turn on for a second, turn on page numbers, and add it to the active reference, and click on details. And you'll notice that you have some choices. You can rename this filter. Page numbers is appropriate. You can change the format. as to what actually appears. That middle pull down lets you have the word page or just the initial P. You can format it with brackets around it or parentheses or whatever else you want. You can change the text style. Change your text style to bold. It'll make it easier to find. And say OK. And then go ahead and close this window. In your Bible Knowledge Commentary, scroll down now from wherever you are until you find a page number. And they should stand out because it's going to be bold and red. Here's one for me. I'm in James 1:17. And you'll notice that this is Volume 2, page 823 of the Bible Knowledge Commentary. So that's a way to start marking out page numbers within the text of the document that you're looking at. Did everybody get that to work? Now, unlike visual markup filters, if you copied and pasted, like if I selected from the paragraph above and copied and pasted, this text would actually copy and paste with the rest of it. So it would say in brackets, Volume 2, page 823. You may or may not want that in the middle of one of your quotes, okay? So you need to be aware that with this filter turned on, that is something that will cut and paste if you cut and paste from this text. But that's a way for you to see where the page breaks are in the original resource. Kind of cool. All right.
I'm not seeing how this is happening. It's supposed to be showing me page numbers, correct?
Yeah, if that's what you turned on.
Yeah.
Okay, go up and review. Make sure it's on. James 1:17. You're supposed to do a page on things the other day, filters. Okay, all of the page numbers. Okay, say okay.
This is text style.
Yep.
Second one.
Text style, okay. Bold.
Type in James 1:17. That's close to a page break.
Okay.
No, that's the verse marker. Scroll. Scroll up. There it is. Line 2, page 2. Okay. You know, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it's not the coolest of filters, but it can be helpful when you're trying to match it up to print resources. If you want to cite a quotation, it's right there for you to cite, so that's nice. Now, if you cut and paste it out of these, you would get the page number in your reference anyway, but you can turn on that visual filter. The other one that's interesting that I want to show you is go up under View, Visual Filters. Make sure Bible Knowledge Commentary is the one that's set. Select Summarization. All right, now, this is actually very cool, and it uses a special algorithm that Libronics has created to highlight the most important aspects of the text. Now, how much are you going to trust that? Well, I don't know. But when you want to just skim through some text to see what the gist of it is, this is a cool filter to turn on. Now go ahead and select the Summarization Filter and click Details. You'll notice that you can select a percentage of the text to highlight. You can select a highlight color. And then say OK. Now mine was set to 25%. And so when I close, now when I look at my Bible Knowledge Commentary, 25% of the text is now highlighted. And it should be And truthfully, guys, I've looked at this before. This is pretty accurate. There are times when I look through the gist of what's going on here. It does a pretty good job. Now, nobody's saying that this is, you reduce it to 1% and it's going to say, this is the most important thing in this chapter. And it doesn't work that way. And as a matter of fact, they say, don't use the filter at anything less than 10%. And I would say, don't use it much below 15 or 20%.
So we can preach just like this highlighted stuff, right?
You can, yes.
That would be an improvement.
It would be once.
Can I put you as a reference on my resume?
Yes, you can. And I'll explain to them your grades in L&R as you asked me to do earlier. Okay, now where does this actually fit in? I mean, first of all, you'll notice that you don't have a summarization filter available for your Bible texts. It's not there, okay? So what are they trying to do? They're just trying to help you get a gist of what the topic is in this particular section and what the hot spots are. Now, for those, how many of you are taking How We Got the Bible? Control L. Okay, freshmen, pay attention because you will eventually have How We Got the Bible. Type in Geisler as the author. Geisler. Or just find a general introduction to the Bible and open the resource. This is your textbook for How We Got the Bible. Now, go up under View, Visual Filters, Summarization, add it over. Now, it's set by default to 25%, and usually I leave it about that. So click Close, and now scan through the text of How We Got the Bible. You got to get past the index. Like turn to page 89. If you type in the reference box at the top, if you select your active index as page number and type 89, you'll go to chapter 6, Specific Claims for Inspiration of the New Testament. And it highlights, in essence, what are the major aspects of that particular chapter. Now, I need to tell you that does not mean that an instructor is not going to take text questions from things that aren't yellow, highlighted. But at least you can scan through this and read through it real fast and get a sense of what this chapter is about. Do you follow what's happening here?
They don't have a liability.
Yeah, there's no liability to your grades may depend on mileage. What is that? Yeah, your mileage may vary. Your grade may vary.
I can only imagine more reaction.
Right.
Well, I read the highlighted portion of the book.
Yeah.
He'd throw the book at you.
And that has happened already.
How did you get that to highlight those main points?
Just turned on the visual filter. Go up under View, Visual Filters, turn on the Summary Filter, Summarization Filter, add it, and say OK. And it should be good to go. So, neat stuff, though. You know, sometimes when we have to do a lot of reading, when you're doing research reading, if you remember in L&R, and many of you don't remember L&R, but if you remember in L&R, one of the things that Badkey said in his book is that you need to be vicious when you read. You cannot read from cover to cover every book related to the Hite and write your paper in less than 4 years, probably. You know, I mean, it would take forever. So you have to learn to skim the text, find areas that will help you understand the topic. Well, this summarization filter can help you do that. So that can be really important. So go ahead and close the general introduction book and go back to the Bible Knowledge Commentary for a second. I accidentally closed mine, so. Now, if you notice, I had mine closed. My Bible Knowledge Commentary was closed. When I turned it back on, the summarization filter is still on. These things, once you turn them on, are set until you turn them off. So if I don't want the summarization, I have to go in and turn that filter off.
Do the authors determine what's highlighted? How do we?
All I can get from Logos is that they use a special algorithm to help them determine what the most important parts are. And I don't know how that's created. So I do look at it skeptically. There's no doubt about it. But again, what's its purpose? Its purpose is to give you an overview of the topic, not to give you every detail that's important. See, most people, well, I don't say it more carefully than that. There is value in skimming when you read, believe it or not. Now, it shouldn't be the only way you read, but it should be your first pass should be to skim the text and say, what's important here? Well, this filter will help you spot at least most of the things, if not all of the things, that are important. Then you turn the filter off and you go back and you dig deeper. Okay? So, all right. So, you've got page numbers. You've got summarization. The other one I want to look at real quick is active Bible reference. This one becomes really important, and for those of you that have Art and Gingrich, I would select active Bible reference, and instead of turning it on for window, you notice you have a choice of all resources or window. Active Bible reference, I would apply to all resources. So select all resources, click active Bible reference. When you go to edit details for the active Bible reference, all you can do is change the color of the markup and the title. Now I have mine set to purple. You can pick whatever color you would like. Uh-oh. Okay, I'm good. Now, what's it doing? I have my New American Standard Bible open and my Bible Knowledge Commentary open. And I want you to notice that my New American Standard is set to James 1:17. And my Bible Knowledge Commentary is going to James 1:17 too, but it's highlighting the passage. That may seem like an obvious highlight, but when you look at you look for a Greek word in Art and Gingrich, for example, I'll show you how this works. I'm going to go to my ESV text. I realize not all of you have Art and Gingrich, but for those of you that do, those of you that don't have it, you should. Those of you that do have it, this is a cool tool. Let me show you. I'm going to turn these back on. Okay, so I'm in James. Let's see. Let's find James 1. This word gift, okay? Every perfect gift. I'm going to right-click on that, and I'm going to go to selected text, and I'm going to find the lemma form, and I'm going to open up Art and Gingrich to this word study. Now, it opened to the Greek word, but notice what it did. It highlighted James 1:17 in the paragraph. Now, if you guys have spent any time in Art and Gingrich, you know that you have this giant block of these strange, sometimes cryptic abbreviations and stuff for all of these early church writings, and sometimes it's hard to find the passage that you're looking for. I want to find out how gift is used in James chapter 1, verse 17. Well, if I don't have that on, I have to scour to find it. But with the active Bible reference on, it shows me exactly in this giant definition where James 1:17 is mentioned. Do you see that? That becomes really powerful when you're looking at like the word love, and the definition in Art Gingrich is a page and a half, but you're looking at John 3:16. So where in that definition in Art and Gingrich does he list John 3:16? Well, you would have to scour to find it. This will help you just pop right to it. And since we applied it to all references, all resources, it's always going to do that from now on. Whenever you open a Bible commentary, whenever you open a Bible dictionary, if you're in a particular passage, it's going to highlight that passage if that passage is referred to in that definition or in that resource. Do you understand what it's doing? Does it make sense? Okie doke. So active Bible reference is powerful. And you can see now that you can apply these